Hey everyone, episode 9 coming right at you, and we're going to be discussing the seasons of change in our life as women, owning our own health through the concept of the maiden, the mother, and the matriarch, and even the guru gal inside. So listen up and take a ride on owning her health right now.
Welcome to this episode of Owning Her Health with your host, Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. Join Lisa as she starts the conversation on what it really takes to become a healthy, wealthy, and whole CEO of your life. Listen in to real talk by real lady leaders in all walks of life as they open up on personal health stories, wealth, career, and feminine abundant living. Learn how to grow by owning your body, expanding your mind, and aligning your soul with the purpose only you can pursue in this world. Happiness begins with owning her health right now.
Welcome everyone. Today on Owning Her Health, listen up because we're going to be talking about you and your journey from birth through death on the way of getting healthy, happy, whole, and aligned with your purpose. For those of you new to my podcast, this is Dr. Lisa Holland. I am an integrative physical therapist based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, working nationally with women to connect the dots online virtually through health coaching, integrative yoga therapy, and my latest love doing psychosocial metrics, helping people understand who they are through behaviors and motivators, and working with medpreneurs and the coaching on that aspect so that they can align with the brand they love, form their own star shining, and make their presence known. So today we are going to be talking about health, but in a new way, in a new concept of thinking about it. And it's funny because I say this all the time because in the allopathic world, which means more the Western medicine world, this is a fairly new concept in their system, which is about maybe 200 years old. And that's the concept of whole total health, looking at the bio, psychosocial, and even spiritual realm. What do we mean by those big words? Well, basically the biochemistry, the movement patterns, all the stuff you learned in science class 101, and then taking that on to understanding how emotions and the chemistry that changes with emotions and what happens inside the body and even outside the body to change some of the things that happen in our nervous system and our muscle system and our gut and all the rest of it. And then taking that on to even relationships and our emotional health. And then taking that on to our concept of who we are, what our self-value is, what we think our role is to ourselves, our self-value to ourselves, our self-love, they might call that, and then even where we see our role in the world. Sometimes people call that purpose, sometimes people call that the calling, sometimes people call that light. I like to just call it a person, a woman in particular for my clients, and we're going to be discussing that today. So if you follow me on Twitter at Her Health Pod for this podcast, or you might be speaking to me on a professional communication with at Twitter YogaDocNC at YogaDocNC, or you might be talking to me on my Facebook at Dr. Lisa Holland PT. What you'll see is this concept, especially on my Instagram at Dr. Lisa Holland PT as well, the Guru Goddess Tribe. And that is a concept that came to me back when I opened up Belly Guru. I was focused on that aspect of the Mama Guru, but I knew that it was a transition, and it was a transition into womanhood that unfortunately a lot of our society doesn't honor anymore. So what do I mean by honoring that? Well, when we become young girls and are getting to the age of puberty, we start to really notice, and maybe even our mother's story starts to come to us, or we start dreading that menstrual cycle or that quote unquote first change. And that's really sad because it's the onset of being able to give life and to really honor your body at being the amazingness that it is, and to also honor the fact that you are different. You are different than the male species, and why not celebrate the ways that you are different? And how are we different? Well, you know what? The biochemistry changes in hormonal changes on a cyclic cycle, a little different than a male. The physical obviously manifests itself or comes out a little bit different, but all in all, we take things in differently, and that is a strength, and we really do not honor that. So when I work on the Guru Goddess Tribe concept, when I'm thinking of feminine, let's say, empowerment, I'm not necessarily thinking of being a warrior and fighting the same way in that linear mindset. I'm actually talking about global. And that's why the concept of the Guru Goddess tribe might seem really, really feminine, but it's not just for females. It's for anyone who understands the idea of the value of, let's say, friendship, someone having your back, maybe is a little bit more of the light worker, understands there's a light in everybody. There's a special something that I'm never going to see on an x-ray. I'm never going to see it on an MRI, but I can feel it when you enter the room. And I can feel that as a practitioner when someone comes to me in pain, with a pain, I can lean in and I can understand and I can really decide what is really the most important quote unquote problem on their list. And half the time as a physical therapist, it's not going to be because they can't necessarily move their arm past 90 degrees. It's going to be because they are now dependent on their child or their husband to get their clothes on, and that really bothers them. And so if I'm somebody who is just working on a very straight physical model, I may prescribe the wrong type of care for them. I might move them to the wrong type of practitioner, and that's not going to work in terms of my outcomes. So I need to honor the fact of where they are in that role. And if it's somebody going into puberty and they're living in a lifestyle or in a society that's making it feel like it's the dreaded thing that nobody even talks about, that it's this ugly, horrible, disgusting time where all of these horrible negative things are going to happen. Could you just imagine on the psyche of a child moving into young maidenhood how that could be? And you as a mother or a grandmother or any woman in any one other woman's life might really start to think about it. How did you enter into that maidenhood? What were the concepts? What was going on? And the best way to do this, which we don't do, which is one of the focuses of this particular podcast, is to get different women of different ages, of different stages of creating their life, of becoming the CEO of their life, into these conversations. Because we don't do that anymore. We don't sit with our wise grandmothers. We don't necessarily honor just getting old anymore and the wisdom that comes with that in our bodies and our minds. We haven't taken care of it enough. And so it becomes the same way as the onset of thinking of puberty as, oh gosh, a chore or something we're not looking for. And then we get there and it's a really uphill battle because we do have to deal with things that are different. We do have to have a readiness for change. And that's another concept that I think not honoring the heroine's journey, moving from where she is as a naive, oh gosh, on the tarot deck we have the major pictures which pretty much show the fool in the beginning. And that's who we are in the beginning. Everyone is. And we're such the fool that we're naive that we don't even understand boy versus girl. And you know what? It's a blessed time. It's a blessed, wonderful time at that time because we are able to just see other people for who we are. We don't look at their color. We're not worrying about their gender. We're not worrying about who they love. We're not worried about what God, their family, their concept of what God looks like. We're not worried about any of that. We're not even worried about what's going on other than that relationship we're having right there and then in the sandbox with that other young child. And then something happens. We start really to identify ourselves as different. And we start to then really rely on the socialization around us to define maybe where our role is, or where the personal value is. And if you're not in a healthy relationship with, let's say, your parents or with your family or with your world or with your own mind, that's the most important, right? Then we may start to form a psyche that filters in things that may or may not be actual truth. Of course, whatever we're filtering into our psyche is our truth. That is our reality, which is why if you can get into something such as yoga or spiritual work or something where there's a personal reflection aspect, it's not just personal development. Spiritual work is deeper because it asks you to look in the mirror. It asks you to really look in the mirror on a moral, ethical basis and to look at a life, how you're living a life where there's consequences. And just straightforward personal development might be looking at you just going and going and going and achieving something and being the best of everyone else, regardless of how you get there. And that's not the work of spiritual development. So the concept of the Guru Goddess tribe, obviously goddess comes out of that, everybody kind of learned of all of that maybe in your Greek mythology, and the concept of that powerful woman, Athena, and really over different cultures and in different societies that honor the matriarch, honor the woman a little bit more than maybe I might see here in America, or in a different way, not necessarily just her physical form, but more of her wisdom and her emotional spiritualness, that medicine woman concept. In those concepts, it was about the magical, thinking of the women as having a magical attributes. And we really, really do, because again, we grow babies. There was a hashtag, love your body put out. I think it was from To Know Bodies, which is a great podcast, by the way, if you are into thinking about the body and relationships in the world and just having great conversations with all different types of providers. So To Know Bodies, check them out on iTunes. They're my friends over there. But side tangent. The concept there, love your body with a hashtag, look that up on Twitter, and they might have it on Instagram, is really great, because if you think about it as a woman, gosh, we have this self-loathing thing going on, especially between the navel and the knees. And that's our best attribute. And there's strife there, and there is a lot of stuff going on there. For every single human being, that is the seat of your immunity in your gut. It is the seat of creation down in that pelvic area. So if we could just bring that concept, right? If we could just bring that honoring of us, that old wisdom honoring of it, and we see it in different cultures, that there used to be a little bit more artwork that depicted that. We honor the top part of the body, the nourishing part, the breasts and things like that in this culture. And, to some extent, that's morphed over time. But when we get down to it, it's just honoring the body and the amazing things that we can do. And it is kind of magical as a woman. It really is. On every 30 days, you're put into this cycle, which reminds you how much in tune and how sensitive and intuitive you are to the cycle of the earth, of the universe, of the moon. Healthy periods run on the full moon. And I mean healthy periods that are not hijacked by pharmaceuticals. Now, I'm not saying you might not need them, but a lot of people are being put on them thinking it's helping hormones, but it's hijacking, and you should know that. But historically, you were following the moon cycle, and the new moon or the full moon meant that you were going to be menstruating and getting a reminder that you did not, get pregnant, and therefore a new cycle was beginning of opportunity, of being able to ground roots and be a vehicle for a new life. And so we have to understand that that's deep in our genes, and there is some mysticism to that. It is pretty darn amazing when you think about the growth of a human being inside of your womb. It's just amazing. And then how it gets there and the randomness of it. I know some people think that they're like, fertile Franny, and they don't understand how they get pregnant so easy, but it really is actually very hard. And it's becoming harder and harder. The statistics now are 1 in 6 with infertility problems. It's not surprising. We're playing around a lot with our hormones. We're playing around with our beauty products, our body products, the soaps we have on our sons and daughters, the hair care things, let's going into that, going and moving, as we're talking of that young maiden and her mindset moving into that concept of all of these things. And you only have to look at a 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old girl and see all the time she spends in the bathroom getting ready and primping and priming herself and doing these types of things almost ritualistically, right? Tied in, because she's really tied. She's still young enough to be able to understand to some level, some deeper level, maybe that emotional level or that spiritual level, to those more ancient tribal customs of adorning yourself in certain ways to attract your mate or your partner. And And that comes naturally as part of trying to find out herself and understand herself and celebrate herself. Some of that is just celebrating herself. And do we as a culture really, really honor that? Do we allow her to do that? Or is it becoming a competition? When we put competition into all of that, on top of a psyche that every single time you get your period, it's the most horrible thing in the whole entire world, we can't even mention it by name, we start to shame. We start to put little subtle things of shame in the psyche. And let me tell you, as somebody, as a pelvic health provider, just a women's health provider in general, working through the mind, body, and soul of women, it hurts. It hurts and it goes into cells and it adds to the problem. So much so that when we have the opposite thing, maybe we're getting in from the maiden into the mother now, and we want to have children and we can't. It is a grief. It is a solid grief when we have our periods and we've been trying to have a new cycle of birth happen within us and with us. And even, miscarriage early on, even though our logic might say, well, that's nature's way of, saving us and saving that unborn child some hassle if it was not able to be sustained, either on our end or the embryo or fetus's end at some point. We can't take that as a blessing. It feels like a failure. But some of that is some of society. Some of that is, can we not be what we're expected to be? Is it not instant gratification as we wanted it? The picture that we always wanted it, is it only one way? And so we can start to see how, let's say, anyone can understand how months of infertility and getting your period can become an emotional drain for you, an energetic drain for you, taking infertility drugs and things like that along with your rest of your world. We can get that logically. But let's think about deeper, that loss and that grief. Can we understand how the emotional body might need to get some more support and health? And do we do that for our mothers? Do we do that for our mothering? And let's talk about not even having children. Let's talk about the mother journey of just feeling, we get to a point in our 20s where we want to build something. We want to maybe start to think about our independence a little bit. And at some point, maybe we shift from just being independent and making money and getting all the things we wanted to do on our own and showing our girl power. And we're moving into wanting to build some roots. And maybe that's not necessarily a family per se. Maybe that's a career. Maybe that's a profession that's going to take years and years and years to build to a practice. Maybe what we're trying to birth is a practice, and we're starting to learn in school and start our profession. And then we have to decide, what are we going to actually birth? And there's a unique pull on women because we've gone into the psyche of birthing dual flames. As we got more equality, as our roles were changed to something that would be outside the norm. Before, when the role was having your children and going into motherhood, you knew where your office was. You knew the dynamics of getting the kids where they needed to go while you still could do your job. When you work out of the home, when you're building a career, when you're building a professional practice, it shifts because you're not physically there. You're not energetically there. Or maybe you're partially energetically there, and that's part of the problem why you can't focus either when you're home or at work. So we really, as we're birthing things, even if it's just a business, right? There's going to be this thought process that, are we making something for the future? It's not just get a job. In fact, many women, after they're just having a job, they need to feel significant in a purpose. Everyone does. Everyone does. But the thing about women is they admit it. If they would, they'd be healthier. We're innately made to admit it. And so we should. We should honor our ability to be in tune with the rhythms of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, millions of years of evolution. And again, we are reminded on a monthly cycle. It's kind of sad, for the quote unquote convenience of it. We're making medications that, you only have to get it 4 times a year. And maybe you could just skip it because you're going on vacation or something special's happening and you don't want to have it. We're getting into a psyche where these things don't count. But they were subtle, subtle, subtle reminders of the magic of who we are. And moving even further into the concept of, even after we've birthed, let's say, that business, or that career, and and those kids, and we're getting into our 40s and our 50s. And to be perfectly honest, it is shifting. Some women are just starting that motherhood track in their 40s, or they're, getting divorced later on and starting that career and birthing it later. But in general, when we're hitting, or naturally we're hitting, universal evolution's not as fast as maybe we have as man-made evolution. And the cycles of life are kind of pulling us to think about, how could we use this? When we get into menopause, we're given this opportunity historically to be free of some of that mothering, to maybe be far enough in our career where we can be the owners or the CEOs or the leaders of our departments and have some leeway of being able to delegate some things that we had to take care of before. Obviously, historically, when you were going through menopause, you would have your kids at an older age, and you wouldn't have to be they wouldn't have to be as dependent on you. You might be entering a new cycle of opportunity of relationship with your partner. You might be able to have a new relationship with your career. I myself have moved over the past couple of years very strongly this past year into the business coaching side. I'm using every piece of what I've learned along the journey, even some of my stuff before I even started in through college, the personal training and dance as a child. And so it comes back to us really owning our self. That's where we really own our health. Can we own ourself and our experiences so that through every transition, we are really celebrating it? Some cultures really celebrate puberty, and they really celebrate motherhood and having that baby and honoring that with you being able to stay with your child for up to a year, paid in some countries. The United States of America, if you're listening to this outside of it, and maybe you don't know if you're within the bubble, but we really have very poor maternal health outcomes compared to other countries that have much less medicalization. Why is that? I'm not saying these things are bad, but evidence would prove they're not necessarily great. And our maternity leave stinks. We're just getting out of the blur of maybe getting some sleep, and we're called back to work. And the shame of maybe deciding that you'd like to have a firmer foundation for the foundation of family, core values within the country, for having sound family values is shamed upon. So again, another layer of shame. So we're looking at this shame when we're going from the young child into the maiden, warrior goddess, right? And then we see this other shame maybe if we've gone to college and we have this degree and we want to just stay, and we have a stronger core conflict and a stronger core value right now to form this solid core of relationship with our family, this growing family. There's a level of shame there. Or maybe you're balancing it. Maybe you found a nice way like me. I just kind of changed the dynamic. I moved to a different part of the country where it would be financially more comfortable for me to experiment on how to form this thing. And you're making some big choices. But overall, you need to make those choices. And if I had not been healthy in my choices for a partner, in my choices for what I expected out of my life and what made me happy, if I was not understanding what I really wanted to use, and in my decisions, how can I, do this in a way that fills me on all my places, then I might have gone down some other road. And in fact, I was down that road for first couple of years. I was pre-med. I mean, I can see what that life would have been. I was with a different guy. I was pre-med. I was doing well. I was taking these studies, and I kind of fast forward, and I think when I look now, I kind of see it, and and out of respect to everyone involved, I'm not going to say what I see, but it wouldn't necessarily been unhappy, but it wouldn't have been unhappy till probably now in my life. I might have not noticed what I missed out. And I'm really glad I found yoga early on, and I'm really glad I actually had a couple of bouts of depression myself, to force me to self-reflect and to really see what my values were. And that was healthy for me. And if I was not healthy enough, like I said, in my choices beforehand, I might have not had the support to really dig down, dig deep, and change things. So when you're owning your health, owning her health, it gets down to getting to eventually where we're all going to go, which is the level of the matriarch. Can we celebrate getting older and being wise? Can we do that? And if we can't, then that can be a hard place to be because, yes, our joints don't work the same. And maybe we're even getting them replaced. And maybe our job goes and we're delegating even a business that we grew to others. We're definitely delegating the children that we grew to others and the world around us. And what is there? Well, there's utter wisdom. There is, if you can honor the love bites along the way, as Danny Cook was talking about her body. If you go back to that episode, I think that's episode 6. I had called them battle wounds, some of those scars we get, but she calls them love bites, and I love that. Or love marks, and I really love that concept. If we can look at that and then celebrate that, and what can we now create? You know, how many times do we say to ourselves, if I had only known then what I know now? Well, hey, lady, you can share that. You can share that like I'm doing mentorships to share that. I'm educating my daughter. I'm into new things such as recently brought on, because I've been I'm constantly researching products for resources that are clean and healthy for my clients, and looking into beauty counters, a great one, a great example of a mission for women. You know, a lot of mothers go into that to give them something to do to work around, but I think it's even better for older women who want to give to maybe their teen daughters, teaching them some of that, and then also to have products that are healthy for them. So, I've actually taken that into my tribe and working on building a tribe with that, because there's so much where that is. We talked about in the early, these dysfunctional menstrual cycles now, what I talked about earlier, and everybody's on the pill, hijacking their menstruation before they even have their cycles set up officially between the pituitary in their brain and their ovaries. So, there's many ways to do this, to skin this cat per se. But it all comes down to us owning our own value, owning our health, and owning our physiology, owning our yumminess, owning our magicalness, owning our self. So as the wise matriarch, what are you doing? If you're listening to me and you're in that role, what are you doing? Because I work with a lot of women who, are really feeling bad about that because of the things, they're so focused on the things that they've lost. Maybe it's been a partner. Maybe it's been the activity level that they had. Maybe it's been, and I try to say, that's true. And we might have to process, because again, there's shame. There's shame in getting older in some cultures, and there's a personal shame, and there's grief. There's grief that comes on because, again, we can't stop it. As we get older, as we have more experiences, we do get wiser. And if we're not celebrating that, if we're not letting ourselves look at that wisdom, then what are we doing? We're pushing it away. We're pushing it aside. We're pushing it in somewhere, and we're getting uneasiness. We're getting dis-ease. And I honestly feel like the path of the heroine, the goddess warrior, the heroine's journey, if not honored from day one, if you're not sharing as the matriarch to your daughters who are the mothers, to their children who are the maidens, and maybe even the little guru gals, then you're part of the problem. And I'm sorry if that offends you, but you are. And again, if you are the mother and are so busy making everything perfect and making everything in this perfect look and having everybody accommodated for that, nobody's learning any of their own self-care, then you're basically making them dependent and you're running yourself ragged. And if you're not enjoying the joy, if you're yelling at your young gal or guys because they're excited and having fun all the time because it's ruining your perfect home that can just be messy for a while, then you're taking away their joy at the only time that they can truly, truly dig themselves into it and be back in that sandbox. They don't know the concept and the heaviness that you carry. Let them celebrate it. And on that concept, these things are not things you graduate. The journey of the thing I love about the cycle of life concept or the heroine's journey is that it's a cycle. It's a circle. It's not this linear thing. You're born and then you die. It is a constant rebirth opportunity. It's a constant ability to go back and revisit. So when I speak of the inner guru goddess tribe, I am talking about something you are connected from the time of birth to the time you leave this body and move on, in essence. I am talking about maybe even having a connection beyond. Who knows? It depends on what you believe in spirit and eternity and universality. And I'll leave that to you. But how about being that older maiden or matriarch or mother moving through menopause and moving into a new role and speaking to your inner guru goddess gal and having some more joy again and remembering what did she like before she was someone's mother or somebody's secretary or somebody's director of such and such or the president of that company. What did she like? Where did she find her joy? Go grab it again. Talk to her. Meditate on her. As the mother, look at your mother and ask her, what would you have done different? How can I learn that now? As the mother matriarch, look at your young maiden, teenage grandchild, and please tell her, to value your body, to value who you are in relationships, to what you expect out of others and yourself. And so I'm going to leave it there. How are you talking to your inner guru goddess tribe? Are you spending time with her? Are you doing this because we're going into a brand new year and you have a brand new opportunity? In fact, I'd say, don't wait. Let's do that now. So from Dr. Lisa Holland, integrative physical therapist, I am happy to wish you a wonderful new year, and I will see you in 2017 on Owning Her Health. Take care.
Thank you for listening into this episode of Owning Her Health with Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. To learn more about her personal and professional development service, visit her online at drlisahollandpt.com.